Hi, thank you so much to everybody who reached out to me yesterday. It really made a lot and it really helped during the day to know just the kind of Jackie chins up comment. It really made a difference to me, so thank you. We have quite a lot of new people who've joined the page, so just a background on this is please comment, please share, please like. But really what I am doing is a month's worth of Facebook Lives talking about the anxiety that I have been experiencing after the death of my son at the beginning of the year after a fight with cancer. But don't feel too sad and bad about it, because actually, I'm trying, really trying, to be kind of honest, because the thing about anxiety and grief is that there are days when you can be really happy and days when you can be really sad. And those of you who were watching yesterday was a rough day for me. It started off a rough day for me. And it got even slightly rougher after the Facebook Live that I did yesterday, because it was kind of weird. So Chris came home and he brought home with him the wonderful words promoted, which actually we never had any doubt about, but the school have been amazing. Really, you do not choose a school on what they will do when your kid gets cancer. But if you did, Crawford College Santon is the choice for you. The support to Chris for this year, the leeway they have given him has been amazing. And I am a really, really proud mother, because it would have been really easy. In his shoes, I would not have gone back to school this year. I would have taken time off or homeschooled, or said, you know what, I'm going to repeat the grade next year and try again. He didn't just pass, he did really well. He did really, really well. He was one of 4 distinctions in his in his drama practical, which I feel really proud about. And he also was made things like the head of the tech crew, which are the people who do all the lightings for assemblies and school plays and things. But that is usually an assignment that is given to someone in grade 11, not someone in grade 9. So I feel like, I can boast about my kid a little bit for a moment here. I'm just switching off the phone that's keeps dinging. So, and for those of you who are in the Northern Hemisphere, you can relax. It is not as blisteringly hot today as it was yesterday. I have a fight with the locals here this time every year. So every year, the weather pattern in Johannesburg is that spring going into summer is typically very hot. It does begin to rain sometime in October, and 2 things happen. The first is every year on the 1st of spring, or the first day of spring on the 1st of September, everybody tells us how this is a massive drought because it hasn't started raining. But the first average rainfall in Johannesburg is in the 2nd week of October. And typically, actually, our weather pattern is that it tends to get very hot in November, very hot in the first few days of December, and then typically on Christmas Eve it starts raining, and then it keeps raining for days on end. So, but it was about 35 degrees Celsius yesterday in Joburg. I think it's come down to about 25 today. So for all you Johannesburg fans, it is not a heat wave, it's summer, but we are in t-shirts. Oh, and there are my bingo wings. Okay, so what are we talking about today? Well, just finishing off from yesterday. So yesterday was like a teary. So then Chris also brought home the school yearbook, and the school had done a wonderful thing, but hadn't given me the heads up. And I think this is one of the things that I found really hard about anxiety as a whole, because they'd done something absolutely wonderful. But they hadn't given me the heads up first. So I am flicking through the school yearbook, and they have devoted a page of the school yearbook to Josh, and what a hero they thought he was, and how much they admired his friendship and his courage. And it was really a beautifully written piece with pictures of him with his friends at camp the day before he died. It was wonderful. And as you can see, even just thinking about it makes me really emotional. And so it was a little bit of a write-off day, because then I spent quite a portion of it feeling really, really sad and about and missing my son. And we had organised yesterday that some friends of ours would come around for dinner, some of our really, really dearest friends. Would come around for dinner, and we were all going to do like an Indian takeout and just chill. And at about, I don't know, they were going to come at 6, and about 5:30. She texts me, says, "I just seen your Facebook Live. Like, one, like, I'm really pissed off at the school for doing that. But two, like, are you really up to having people?" And 99% of me said, no, I really don't want to see people. But the 1% of me, the same piece of me, was like, actually, these friends really understand. So one of them has an anxiety disorder of her own. So actually we can really talk about shared experiences there, and kind of have the brutal, the honest conversations about what we're taking. Is it working? She fortunately apparently has a psychiatrist who's hotter than mine. My psychiatrist is like, I don't know, he's like a human teddy bear. He's lovely. Her psychiatrist is hot. But anyway, actually what I was reminded by when they came through is that we spent a really long evening together, and we had a wonderful time. And actually by the end of it, our evening had gone from feeling sad to feeling in an absolutely celebratory mood of Chris's achievements and what a remarkable man. I guess he was a remarkable boy, but he's becoming a remarkable man, and that's amazing for a mum. But anyway, we're 6 minutes in, and I haven't got to what I wanted to talk about other than boasting about the amazingness of my children, who, as you will realize, are more amazing than yours. Even your furry ones. Actually, my furry children are sitting outside in the sun, and they're so beautifully behaved now. I wonder if I can swing it around and get you to see old Wookie and there we go. Put up, there you go. There's Wookie and Lala, the little rat. Lala's ancient little girl. Wookie, we call a puppy, but I think he's about 7 years old now. But they are guarding desperately against the evils of online shopping deliveries that we're expecting to come through today. So they're kind of on red alert, hence I have the earphones on. Also, Lala is like, she's a real troublemaker. So she starts howling, and then you can just hear all the dogs in the neighborhood join her in this kind of howling chorus, particularly when that mealy lady arrives. Okay, so what are we talking about today? So this one is a little bit like the vegans, actually, because one of the things that I have absolute anxiety about is seeing, interacting, talking to members of the coaching fraternity, which was my previous occupation. So, when Josh was diagnosed, I was working as a coach and as a happiness consultant. I had my own business on that, a very nice, lucrative business. And of course, when Josh got sick, I was like, it required a lot of travel, a lot of time away from home. And actually, there was two things going on for me. One is I'm going to be with my son for every second that I can. And I did. And the other was kind of the first rule of coaching or any helper profession is that first you have to be fine. And here we are, and I am clearly not fine. So there's a little bit of me that's like, well, I have like a logical, really, I have good excuse for leaving the coaching profession. But the coaching profession itself has always been a massive source of anxiety. So from the day on my very first course, hello, Shakira. On the day that I went on my very, very first course, that was like more than a decade ago, I never, ever felt I was good enough. Not from an intellectual point of view. Of all the things that I worry about, being clever enough isn't actually one of them, except when I'm with like Shannon and like people like him, because like he's, and Prashant, Josh's best friend. Oh my God, he's so clever, and he's so sharp and so quick, and it's so annoying. But he also talks quite quietly, which allows me to go like, what? Pardon? And then that gives me time to actually try and keep up with the conversation, but he's really sharp. Anyway, total sidetrack, sorry. But what happened in the coaching so far, I spent 10 years feeling like I was never enough. And I'll tell you like a story that really, really kind of demonstrates it, is that I had been a coach, and I kind of climbed. I was very lucky in that I worked at a corporate. The corporate paid for the massively expensive training of becoming a coach. And because I was one of the early adopters of coaching in the country, I kind of became one of the, I don't want to say senior, but one of the well-known coaches quite quickly. And in particular, because as part of, I'm sorry about these dogs, I love them dearly, but they're mad as hatters. So the buzzer's just gone for the gate, but they don't stand by the gate. They stand by my window and bark because they're actually scared of the man at the gate. If there's any thieves watching, they're big and vicious and they bite terribly. So anyway, so I was in this very privileged position that I was one of the senior coaches in this big organization. And partway through my work there, I transferred out of the business world that I'd been in, where I'd been in IT and in process re-engineering. And I took over the portfolio of setting up a kind of coaching philosophy and a coaching program, and also identifying who would be the coaches, the external coaches who would work with senior executives across this massive organization. I forget the numbers, like, I don't know, several 100,000 people worked in the organization. And of course, that made me at the time think that I had lots and lots and lots of friends, because, you know, everyone wants to be friends with the person who has, you know, the keys to the checkbook, I guess, you know. A big part of that, of my responsibilities was deciding who would be on the panel and who wouldn't. But I remember early on when we had decided that we were going to have a panel and a set rate and all those, you know, corporate things, we called in as many of the kind of senior coaches in Johannesburg, in fact from across the country, to a briefing session about how we expected it to work, and that we were setting a single rate and what have you. And I remember saying then, so listen guys, to the coaches, so there's a room of probably about 150 coaches, and we've gone through all the requirements, and I say to them, but we have an expectation that you're in supervision, so you know how it is if you're in a helper profession. You know, having a supervisor to debrief you and to help you see blind spots and things can be really useful. So we had a requirement that these coaches would be in supervision, but we just wanted them to give us an assurance that they were in supervision. And I remember them saying, you know, so, you know, when you're in supervision, you can talk about these clients and stuff. You can talk about, if you want to talk about something that's not going right in the kind of process and things, then come and talk to me. But if it's like you as a person and your deeper being and that shit, you need to go and talk to your supervisor. And I remember getting a phone call from one of the senior learning managers, a woman called Emma, a couple of days later, who told me I had made her feel ashamed and I had brought the organization's reputation into disrepute by using the word shit. And you know, when somebody just takes, there I am, I thought I'd done this amazing presentation, and I'm quite good at that kind of stuff, actually. I need to be told that, you know, I was a reputational risk for the institution. And actually that kind of, it's a stupid story, but it kind of summarized how I felt throughout my coaching career. So I felt always on my guard. Was I using the right language? You know, all the other coaches do Nia and yoga and are at one with the universe and go on silent retreats, you know. And I read police procedurals and write, you know, funny books about, you know, yesterday I wrote a scene about a goat eating a dildo. I mean, I know, I've always known that, like, I wasn't the same as the rest of them. And of course I had a sense of humor, and sense of humors don't go down well with the very some very, very, very wonderful, lovely people. But if I give you any feedback, it is your sense of irony is poorly developed. So I've always felt one child was different, and I always felt I was weird. And then, of course, there was that going on. And then, of course, Josh was sick. And two things happened when Josh was sick. Three things, I think. The first thing was, of this massive, massive community, you know, these hundreds of people who were, oh, such dear friends when I was in a position to get them work, disappeared off the face of the earth, you know. I remember being really particularly hurt when one of them, somebody who had actually really looked up to as a mentor in the industry, told me that she wouldn't be able to come to Josh's memorial because she had organized a girls' weekend. And I was like, okay, so, you know, I understand where I stand in your level of priorities. But I mustn't worry because she'd sent her son. And I'm like, but, you know, it's not like a dignitary thing. You know, it's not like a diplomatic event. This is my son who has died, you know. And I remember being really, really hurt. And it took me a long time to kind of forgive and go, okay, but that's a data point. And that just shows me where I sit in your priorities. And then I must reprioritize where you sit to, you know, accommodate that. So that was the first thing, that this community where I'd always felt like I was struggling to keep up and feeling like an outsider and feeling too weird for them, kind of disappeared. The second thing that happened actually when Josh was sick, that all of these things, these techniques that I'd been teaching people on how to deal with, you know, stress situations, I just didn't use any of them, you know. And it is one of the things that one day, give me feedback if you think it's a good idea, I would like to go and do public speaking again. But one of the things that I really realized is you can go on retreats, you can go on resilience training, you can do all these things, but when it comes down to it, when things get really bad, actually what you do is you put one foot in front of the other and you just keep going because you don't have any choice. And one of the things I absolutely believe out of Josh's situation is that my husband and Rhoda are having a really loud conversation next door. I'm just going to close the door. I'm doing a Facebook Live, babe. Sorry about that. Where were we? All right. I am back. Short-shitting on the husband, but we're back. You know, when stuff happens, like really bad stuff, and actually, I live in South Africa. We live in a really violent society. And it's one of the things I really learned when you're sitting in a cancer ward. Cancer ward does not care if you were rich or poor. It doesn't care if you are black or white. It doesn't care what your faith is. It doesn't care what your belief is. Just cancer's there and it's doing its thing. And actually, you know, for me, Josh was really lucky in that he had two parents cohabiting or with him. You know, our nuclear family was intact. But that also I was in a position to give up the income to be able to be with him. And it was very, very hard to look at all the kids sitting in the cancer ward with no one with them, because either, you know, there was only one parent or their parents could not afford to miss work to be with their kids. So you have these kids going through these painful and really unpleasant treatments with strangers, essentially. I mean, the nurses are wonderful, but essentially they're strangers to these children. So that, for me, was a big learning. And I did not use any of the things I learned in coaching. What I learned was hello, Mandy, you put one foot in front of the other and you just keep going. And the third thing that I came out of this was my belief in the importance of kindness. So I have already mentioned the kindness that came from the people who I went to school with. That was massively unexpected, but their timing, their approach, everything was just, couldn't have come at a better time and in a better way. But the other one was the cholangiocarcinoma community itself. So you've got to remember that Josh was probably I think the next youngest patient was 10 years older than him, and even that was an anomaly. The average age of the cholangiocarcinoma patients was sort of 50 years or 50, 60 years older than Josh. And this amazing, fabulous community, they adopted him like their grandchild and followed our story and gave me massively great advice. What should I be asking doctors? What should I be asking nurses for? What should I be checking up on? I have become a real pain in the ass to nurses because, of course, my big experiences with oncology nurses, so like an oncology nurse does not come into the room wearing a shirt that goes below her elbows because that's a hygiene issue. She does not come into the room having not either scrubbed her hands or put on those blue sterile gloves. They don't touch a drip without an alcohol swab. So, of course, when Chris went in for anesthesia, those poor nurses, because the nurses would come in to just do his vitals, and I'm like, you go outside and you wash your hands and you put the alcohol stuff on, and they're like, but we just putting the blood pressure cuff on, and I'm like, I don't care. You are going to spread infections. So those poor nurses. But anyway, so the main thing that really out of this is that I have this massive anxiety because essentially I have lost the faith in coaching. And lots of people said to me, oh yes, but being a frustrated executive is slightly different from dealing with your kid with cancer. And I guess they are right. But the bottom line is I did not use any of the techniques that I had been teaching with people. And I do think that, soft skills training is good. If you are someone who shouts at your staff and can be taught a way to communicate with them better, of course, that's great. But these kind of I will give you this kind of transformational shift. I really lost the faith on that one because for me, really one thing helped, and that was kindness. Just being kind, being there. And I am immensely, immensely grateful for all the people who have been kind. And I have experienced, one of those, I am quite a control freak, as you may have guessed. So I like to be the one doing the kindness and the gestures. And it was a new experience, a very uncomfortable experience for me to have to rely on the kindness of other people during Josh's sickness. And, I am not in the position where one of my friends was in the position needing the kindness of people to give her money for her treatment, which I think must be a horrendous situation to be in. I wasn't in that situation, but I was in the situation where I needed doctors to come out in the middle of the night. I needed triage nurses to put us to the front of the queue. So I just needed people who would pick up the phone and text me and 1 a.m. going are you okay? Can we bring you food? You're stuck in the hospital, There was one particular organization, a crowd called the DL Link, who brought me coffee and pastries on the days when Josh had surgeries, and they will never know what a massive difference it made. Even though it was, the coffee from the coffee shop in the hospital, it was horrible coffee. But you know what? When you've been sitting there from 4 a.m. in that horrible, nasty waiting room and outside ICU and the surgical suites, that coffee is great, let me tell you. And they're a Jewish organization, so the pastries always came from this amazing kosher bakery in the neighborhood. And so one of the things, I guess, Mandy's saying control freakness and anxiety are related. No shit, Mandy. I think that's actually why I was really thrown off guard by the yearbook. And I realized actually how hard it must be for Chris and Shannon, because one of my things about staying in the house is that I do think I can control that. I can control who I see, who I interact with. I don't often get something where I'm just flipping through a magazine and there's a picture of my dead son. But Chris deals with that all the time because, one of the things that the school does that is awesome, I think, is that, there are two boys. There was Joshua, who died this year, and then there was another boy, Gareth, who was slightly older than Josh, and he I don't think that we even know how he died. He went to bed one night when he was in matric about 5 years ago, and he just never woke up. So the thing that the school that I think is amazing is they have supported me and Janet, Gareth's mum, tremendously. I mean, they invited Janet to be Gareth was a swimmer, and they invited her to be one of the school swimming coaches, and she stuck with that for 5 years so that she could stay connected to the kids and his friends and what have you. And the school make an enormous effort to make sure that Josh and Gareth will never be forgotten, which is awesome. And also terribly unsettling if you're his little brother and trying to just get on with your day. So I do think it's one of the things that maybe why I'm finding it easier to respond to the meds and stuff is that I do just have much more control over things than Chris does. So, and then the only other thing that I wanted to say to you is it has given me a real sense of like, but then I have kind of a duty to do more kind things, you know. So part of this, oh, I think we've got another delivery. The dogs are off. Part of it, I think, is like I do have a duty to try and be a nicer, kinder person. It means I want to avoid the people who make me feel bad, and I want to spend more time with the people who make me feel good. It makes me want to do things for people, but not you know, the difficulty is like, you know, I can't promise you, hey, I'll be there for your, I don't know, to man your library book sale thing at 10 o'clock, because who knows, like, you know, 10 o'clock could be fine, or I could still be in bed crying. So I am trying to do more and more things, stupid things like the blood donation, because I can actually do the blood donation at any time of the day. Although I can't do it with Ritalin, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to take a Ritalin holiday next month for a few days so I can make my donation. But trying to do more and more things where we can just go and make a difference. So one of the things that I really like about Shannon's approach is that over the course of this year, there have been 1 or 2 times where we have had unexpected windfalls. So, for example, one of the lovely things the school did was they returned Josh's school fees. And so we were able then to use that money to do some anonymous philanthropy. And that feels really great. That feels really great to know that out there are a couple of people whose lives are better because of something that was terrible. So that, I think, is something, it really does make me feel better. And hello, Sharon. It really does make me feel better. But it's anonymous and it's not time dependent. And I don't, you know, I don't have to take any phone calls or commit to being anywhere at a specific time. And that really works for me. So that is about all. God, I've been talking for nearly half an hour today. Whew, sorry, guys. The other thing that somebody said to me yesterday made this recommendation, which I feel really stupid for not having thought of earlier, is one of the things that makes me massively anxious. In fact, I think it's a topic that I've planned for next week, is phone calls. Like, please don't phone me. Please don't do it. Text is awesome. And so she said to me, but why don't you just change your voicemail message to saying, please don't phone me, please leave me a WhatsApp or a text message, I don't listen to voicemail anymore, why don't, you know, please just text, unless like Chris has had a seizure or something. So that is going to be on my to-do list today, because I think that's just going to make me feel so empowered, because I don't know about you, but the phone rings and I actually just run to the other room and make either Rhoda or Shannon answer it usually, which is kind of chickeny, isn't it? So anyway, enough about me talking about my life hiding behind the proverbial sofa in case any of the coaching fraternity arrives. Oh, please don't arrive unexpectedly. That's a big control issue. I will see you tomorrow. And I'm sorry for going on for so long. I didn't know I had so much to say. But I will see you tomorrow. As you can see, I'm a lot jollier today. And yeah, it's back to the book. See you tomorrow. No, I won't see you tomorrow. I'll see you on Monday, because I give myself the weekends off because I'm a slob like that.